Chapter 5. Jake walked beside Ken, offering a useless hand every time his wounded friend swayed. He really should have known better than to drag him into this. Al seemed thrilled, but that kid was always up for crazy shit. Kenneth probably would have rather stayed home. He had said something about a date with his girlfriend while they were gathering supplies. Fat chance of that happening now. But hell, Kenneth had chosen to come with him. It was like they said, you can't pick your friend's nose. Kenneth could have easily said no. Jake had even given him an out after they had crossed over. They'd both wanted to come. He turned his attention to the troll. The creature wasn't paying much attention to them, just lumbering along the path expecting them to follow. Jake considered running again. His side was still throbbing from his previous little jog, but he and Al would be able to carry Ken together. They could run into the trees and hide somewhere too small for the troll to fit. He looked over his shoulder for the hooded men. They had disappeared, but that creepy as fuck demon wolf was on their tail. Head bowed low to the ground, shoulders bobbing smoothly over its flattened ears, ready to pounce at the slightest misstep. They'd all be bitten if they ran. He would have made conversation, but he was more than a little afraid of being ripped from the ground like an acorn again by that behemoth, so they continued on in silence, prisoners of these aliens. At least they weren't about to be eaten, or so the guy in the hood said. Just when he thought his legs might give out under all the walking, a light appeared at the end of the path. It was a small cottage, just like the ones in the fairy tales, cobbled together from misshapen boulders and logs, complete with a water wheel on one side and a crooked chimney pouring smoke into the night sky. It looked small, cozy even. As they drew closer, he saw that it was actually massive. Cozy for the troll, maybe, but a mansion by human standards. The immense door was a good foot or two taller than the troll himself, and the windows were so high off the ground that Jake would have had to climb onto Al's shoulders just to be able to peek over the sill. The troll stopped at the door and turned to them. He looked less like a monster now, and more like a big old biker guy named 8-Ball or some shit. He looked down at them and sighed.
This is my home, so you gonna be my guests, okay?
He saw that they didn't quite understand, so he elaborated.
Like you at the lady's mama's house, okay? No mess, no wild.
Jake wasn't sure what the troll meant by no wild, but he got the gist and nodded. The others did too.
Good, said the troll. Now you come in.
He opened the titanic door and ushered them into the living room. The space was large, with a cooking stove off to the left of the door and a mammoth couch to the right. A web of electric lights hung from the rafters above, and beside an open hallway at the far end of the room was a pile of blankets and pillows like some kind of nest for a family of dogs. It seemed the troll didn't live alone. In the room were 3 other creatures which resembled the thing Jake had seen with the flyers the night before. A fat brown one covered in tufts of sparse fuzz standing upon a high stool at the stove, cooking. A lankier one, with leathery, mud-red skin, kneeling on the wooden floor scrubbing at an odd stain, and a third, tinier one with huge fox-like ears perched in the rafters among the tangle of lights. Jake noticed this third one last, and it was the only one to look at him. She, he thought it was a she, they all seemed like females, gave him a smile and looked at the troll, who sat himself down on the couch with a soft thwump and sighed. He muttered something in an unfamiliar language and turned to his 3 human guests.
Are you hungry? Is she making love?
Jake turned to Alan, who seemed to have taken charge of the situation. He was looking a little tired under Ken's weight. The troll seemed to notice this too, and scooted over on the couch.
You sit him down. Bite like that probably make him real tired.
He barked a dry laugh and patted the cushion beside himself, setting up a small cloud of dust. Al shuffled over to the spot, and Jake helped him lower, or rather lift, Ken onto the massive couch. Ken slumped backwards and closed his eyes, chest heaving steadily. "What's Lorp?" asked Al.
"Food,"
said 8-Ball. "Soylent Green?" The troll gave him a funny look, lip curled up to reveal surprisingly clean teeth.
"He's brown."
One of the creatures, the one scrubbing the floor and the tallest of the 3, poked her head up and said, "Max doesn't eat green food." The troll laughed again.
"I eat what eats green food."
He slung his arms over the back of the couch.
"And when I fall into the earth, what's green eats me."
"That's not exactly how it works," Al said. He looked like he was about to explain the ins and outs of decomposition, but the troll gave him a warning look.
You aren't there think stupid, are ya? Think we don't know the dirt?
He shook a thick, lazy finger at him.
We know the dirt.
I didn't mean, stuttered Al. I mean, actually, your English is really good? The troll stared at him for a tense moment before barking out another laugh and nodding in satisfaction.
Good.
He then turned to the fatter, hairier of the creatures who was working at the stove.
Vart, he said. Och daugoro chili gans smitut.
Done, said the fat creature, giving the pot one final stir before removing it from the hot plate. She closed the shutters on the stove and set the steaming pot on a nearby counter.
Good, the troll hollered. Bring it us.
The creature, Vort apparently, or maybe Wart, dished out 4 servings and handed one to the troll and each human. Ken sat there, staring through his bowl. He looked like he was on something hard. Galaxies in those eyes. Jake sat down beside him and looked at his own bowl. A gooey mash of strings of meat and maybe squash. To call it brown was a stretch. If he had seen a crayon labeled brown and it was this noxious pale color, he would have melted on the heater vent and told his little sister it was something the dog hacked up. It didn't smell bad though, and he was starving, so he took a bite. It tasted like pork. He saw that the 3 little housekeepers didn't have plates, so he did the stupid thing and asked if they were eating. The troll shook his ginger head, making his pockmarked jowls jiggle in the electric lights.
They only eat the green stuff.
After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, Al turned to their captor and asked, "What's going to happen to us?" The troll shrugged, finished chewing the bite of gruel in his mouth, and swallowed.
Not my business. I just got the beds.
He took another bite.
If I am lucky, what happens to you is I get meat for 2 weeks.
That guy said you couldn't eat us. The troll almost spat loap all over the floor in his laughter.
I don't know the word for the thing,
he said.
You know what?
He was looking at the creature who was still scrubbing the floor. She halted her task and looked at Al over her long nose. Max was making a joke.
Joke, said the troll. Yeah. No, can't eat jug here.
He shook his head, making his ridiculous jowls jiggle again.
No, not anymore.
He scraped up the last drops of tan fluid from his meal and stood, leaving the empty dish on the couch.
I assure you to bed, no?
Without waiting for them to finish their lawap, which Jake had no real intention of doing anyway, the troll marched across the room toward the hallway.
Come.
Jake got up from the couch and took his and Ken's dishes to the counter, then he and Al helped Ken to his feet and walked, or rather dragged, him to the hallway. The troll opened the first door on the left and swung his arms back and forth, saying, in, as they shuffled into the room. There was a single bed in the far corner. Big, but not big enough for all 3 of them. And a dresser beside the door with nothing but a handheld mirror and a tall bottle of some clear fluid. Jake half expected the troll to give them some kind of tour of the room, but the beast said nothing and shut the door in their faces, reminding them that they were prisoners, not guests. They helped Ken onto the bed. He was present enough to maneuver himself into a comfortable position on his back, staring up at the rafters with glassy eyes. Jake looked at Al, who was gazing through the high window at the tops of the trees against the stars. "This is real," he said low. Jake almost felt a sort of satisfaction before Al looked back down at Ken and pointed at the red-stained cloth wrapped around his bicep. "That's real." "Yeah, it is," said Jake. He felt something hot bubbling up through his guts and sat down on the bed. "Jesus. Those bee people," Al went on. "They'll come to help him like they did you. It's probably their niche in the forest." Al had never been good at comfort, but Jake appreciated the effort. He straightened himself and looked across the room at the bottle on the dresser. He got up and marched over to it. The dresser was short, human-sized, and he was able to see the bottle's label. It was written in weird, swooping letters that he couldn't read, but the design was familiar enough. He popped the cork and took a whiff, then twirled around with a smile on his face. "Alcohol." He took a swig and handed the bottle to Al, who sniffed it tentatively before taking a sip of his own. "Ugh!" He choked on the richness of it, spilling dribbles down his chin. "Vodka." Jake took the bottle back from him, about to explain how this was definitely not vodka, when there came a tiny cackle from above. They looked up to see the big-eared creature from before, perched on the rafters like some weird naked owl. "Not good," the creature giggled, leaping down from her perch and landing softly on the bed beside Ken. She used her long, segmented antennae to inspect his wounds, smelling it, Jake supposed. Finally, she turned to them with a grave look on her face. "Not good." She inexplicably laughed again. He was a werewolf, said Al, wasn't it? The creature nodded. Does that mean... She nodded again, pointed to the wound, and said,
Like an egg.
What? Said Jake, perplexed. I think she means it's going to hatch, said Al. She stepped back from Ken and looked up into her brow, thinking.
I know a place, she said. The tree can help it.
The tree? What tree? She shook her head and raised 3 fingers, enunciating as well as she could.
Siree.
Good thing Max said he'd leave the door unlocked, said Jake. The creature looked amazed.
Did it say that?
Oh yeah, said Jake. Said we're free to go any time. Her amazement turned to puzzlement, then her face relaxed.
It didn't say that.
No. The creature looked away from Jake and pointed the wall towards a series of rungs that led up into the large window over the bed.
That way.
She leapt to the floor and started running around in circles excitedly, stopping before the first rung and beginning to climb. She crawled along the sill and undid a latch, smiling down at the humans.
They can get out.
Jake shared a hopeful look with Al, who turned back to the creature and asked, How do we get up there? She cocked her head and pointed at the rungs on the wall. Al and Jake looked at the tiny ladder dubiously. She pursed her lips and shook her head, shrugging. Jake walked over to the dresser in the corner and lifted it from the bottom. It was fairly light. He pointed to Ken. Help me get him off the bed. Al took him under the shoulders and Jake grabbed his ankles. Ken's eyes widened and he jerked up, head swaying as the blood fell into his gut. What's going on? He cried. Jake shushed him. Come on, man, we're gonna get you some help. Huh? What for? Just move. They found a place against the wall on the bare side of the room to lean in while they cleared the top of the dresser off. Jake put the bottle of liquor in his bag. Then they heaved the thing onto the bed to create the world's jankiest ladder. The creature bounded happily back and forth along the sill, then opened the window with a soft creak. Al climbed out first. He loudly whispered back, Send him through! And Jake helped Ken out after, where he fell directly onto Al, sending them both sprawling into the grass below. Ken let out a sharp noise when he landed, but bit his lip. Jake climbed out after him, followed by the creature. He helped his friends onto their feet and they brushed themselves off. Now what? Said Al.